Welcome back to the channel. Currently, I got myself a nice big party room to take place. Lots of projects will be involved throughout the rest of this time. Today is August 21st, 2022. Currently, I will be working on the likes of Hot Wheels Hilarity, Gaming with Kaiju Force Neo, and HJN. But now is the time that we touch up on another series that I have been running for a little while now. Last year, I introduced a new series dedicated to movie reviews that should have taken place a long time ago. And earlier in 2022, I introduced another series dedicated to movies that I had previously talked about way back in the day. And I've since started to talk about them again. But here, throughout the rest of 2022, I'm going to focus specifically on films I should have talked about years ago, Season 2. So, let's get into it. Simply pulling off from this iPhone SE3 that I had picked up. I could basically look at my notes. And of all movies that I have, in fact, never talked about before, Speed, 1994. Starring the likes of Keanu Reeves and good old Dennis Hopper. This is one of many great examples of Keanu Reeves' acting career throughout the 90s. And he's had several appearances throughout that time period. It's not like how today he's basically one of the most renowned and most popular modern class actors that we've ever heard about in this day and age. Back in 94, he was something different. He proved to be a bit of an action star, much like Bruce Willis in Die Hard or Clint Eastwood in Dirty Harry. Not to mention many other unique examples that happened. And Speed happened to utilize the action hero element of its time. Being that it was a bit of a latecomer though, as opposed to most action hero franchises that have been started by this point, it was fair to say that it was more belated than necessary. But Speed did ensure that its action, its acting, and all the unique pieces dedicated to its own runtime more than make up for it. What this is specifically is Keanu Reeves stars as an officer of the law, willing to fight for anything to ensure justice is specifically put together at all costs. His main mission in this movie is he's up against a bomb maker. Dennis Hopper himself plants a bomb on a Greyhound bus, an old school Greyhound bus. His main mission is to, in fact, allow the bomb to be activated if the bus were to reach 50 miles per hour. And if it goes anything slower than that, then it will detonate on contact. It's up to Reeves himself to figure out how the bomb got under there, how to safely evacuate all of the people loaded on board, and most importantly, how to find the culprit himself responsible for threatening the lives of dozens of people. Of course, the film itself does begin with a similar situation. An elevator shaft ends up going down pretty badly. But thankfully, not before all the people inside are evacuated, before it goes down all the way to the floor. So when Reeves himself gets to the bus, he has a bit of a difficult time entering the bus itself while it's stuck on the highway. He had to commandeer a couple civilian vehicles just to get to that point. But most importantly, the passengers on board, even the driver, do not realize that Hopper's bomb is literally underneath it, ready to detonate if it goes over 50 miles per hour. But of course, with enough time, effort, patience, Reeves gets on board, ready to inform everybody of the incoming danger. And the main mission on that point is to utilize all creative efforts possible Though, of course, this would involve the bus having to be driven above 50 miles per hour at all times. Otherwise, the bomb will detonate. End of story. They drive through a lot of streets, a lot of highways, and they even get to a section of road that is under repair. Meaning, they had to jump over it. They had to go up over it like a ramp and then land on the other side of this so-called bridge. So, when you really think about it, it's one of those examples of action films that really keeps you on edge, almost at all times. It gives you that feeling that there's a tiny window just waiting to happen, where the needle on the speedometer gets so close to the danger point that it could allow the bomb to explode, all on its own. I will say though then, for the most part, being that this is an action movie primarily used as a way of expressing how bomb makers will do anything possible to endanger the lives of many. On the other side though, you got all kinds of people out there who know about these situations and who happen to be experts at this stuff, and who will do anything to ensure that lives are protected no matter the cost, even if it does cost them their own lives. If you're ever familiar with the many people out there whom are actually good at defusing bombs, especially in the fact that some bombs are used to destroy buildings, a lot of which are plastic explosives, placed on critical support elements of most structures. But in this case, of course, it is a moving vehicle that goes pretty fast compared to most vehicles. But today, while vehicles can certainly break the speed of sound and even go well above that, it was unlike a lot of things that had happened. This was another full-fledged example of Keanu Reeves' early days in his own film career, of which that he was able to really score in plenty of cash on his own behalf, and also get the attention of lots of people out there who were willing to see this. Of course, with other films that he had on his side, like Bram Stoker's Dracula, Bill and Ted, Point Break, etc., he certainly had a lot of entries in film. Of course, today, he's even bigger than he ever used to be in his whole life. His inclusion in the John Wick series, Toy Story series, and then of course with Cyberpunk 2077. Oh man, what a mess. He certainly has garnered much more than what he usually does. But back to the real action of this whole episode. Eventually the bus does actually explode, but only after everybody is evacuated from it safely. And of course, there was the point where Keanu Reeves and Julia Roberts, they both escape the bus via a piece of metal that slides around like a sled on thin ice. And the bus itself crashes into an airplane, destroying both vehicles at the same time. And that's a pretty electrifying explosion that would definitely irritate Michael Bay by any means. But it certainly is a million times better of an explosion scene than any of his films combined. I am dead serious. Eventually, what happens is that Dennis Hopper himself is found, and they eventually engage in a pursuit. While the forces are able to catch up to him, he somehow is snively and clever enough to be able to escape. But, of course, we all know that our amazing action star himself, Keanu Reeves, is able to get down there and allow for him to be killed. So, that right there is a climax. The main antagonist is simply smacked in the head by a hanging object on the ceiling of a subway. So when you really think about it, this movie really has a lot of stuff going for it. And I'm especially proud to call it a personal favorite. An instant classic that is, in fact, almost 30 years old, and I sure hope that 30 more years will pass and this will be fondly remembered at least as much as other films of its own time. The year 1994 was very busy for what it already was. You got movies of all sorts. Pulp Fiction, The Lion King, Wes Craven's New Nightmare, not to mention TV shows, and hundreds of other stuff. So, of course, it was a big year for what it already was, but Speed sure did give us that masterpiece vibe that it unfortunately never got at the box office, nor by critics for the most part. Many people just fail to know the facts behind how a movie really succeeds. It's not just about the screenwriting, not about the acting, not about the budget, not about the soundtrack composition, not about the action scenes, drama, romance, horror, sci-fi elements, but it is in fact about how it performs. And because of how well this film has aged already, I could sure tell you, I'll be keeping this as a fond memory in the back of my head for decades to come. But how would I personally score this? I've been keeping scores a little absent for some time. But if you wanted to hear anything about me on this, 8.0 is what I would have to give this nice piece. It doesn't have to be known as a masterpiece, at least something you can watch over and over again, because it did do a lot of breakthroughs and introduced a few big elements in terms of twists, cliches, and even giving us some nice pieces of meme to look at. Lots of stuff you can see on the internet nowadays, aside from clips of the movie, or even just rent or buy the movie itself, or even stream it like I did it the first time around. But overall, really good movie. Definitely go watch it. Keanu Reeves is in it, for all of you modern folks out there. Well, anyways, I will have plenty of other stuff to talk about soon, so be sure to like, subscribe, comment, follow me on social media, and stay on the Hollywood side.